In this screencast, I would like to walk through your notebook packets with you and give you a little bit of insight on not only the notebook check, but also how the notebook check and the notebook help you study for an APES test. So starting out, I want to point out to you guys that the bell ringers and the vocabulary are always going to be on those notebook checks. So make sure that you've done it. Also make sure that you're doing it on the day we assign it in class and that you are actively trying to answer those questions. The reason we choose the bell ringers is because we think they are the most important concepts that we've covered in previous days, or perhaps a concept that we feel that the book doesn't do enough with. So when we do the bell ringers, it is not for our benefit, it's not for busy work, it's not to keep you working while we take attendance. It really is for us a reminder of things to go over again and to review, especially since we switched to flipping the classroom. We talk a lot more through the bell ringers so that you understand concepts that maybe were harder to get not meeting one-on-one. The vocabulary is also incredibly important, especially this time as we're going to have an FRQ. You need to know your vocabulary terms and what they mean, and be able to differentiate between the two. It's not always going to be a straight copy down the correct answer question. Sometimes it will make you think about a relationship between a question and a vocabulary term. So be aware of that. Out of a common notebook check of, let's say, 30 points, usually 5 are absolutely, positively, 100% there in your packet. You just have to find it. About 5 are connections and harder questions. The rest are filled in with questions that you simply had to answer in class to get the correct answer on the notebook check. Okay, so that's a little bit about bell ringers and such. And so moving on, we get to our notes. There will be questions about the notes, even though you are not doing notes in class. Now again, these are going to be some pretty simple questions and straightforward because everything is written down for you, no blanks to fill in or anything of that nature. But do you really know what's written down on the notes page? It's going to take you a lot longer to answer a question if you don't even know where to begin looking. Now the top part on this page is all just questions, and then we start getting into the case study about the U.S., and then we start talking about reasons why the population grows. Things in the column to the left side that can jog your memory, or pictures or doodles about what these items are, can help those of you who are visual learners to make connections to the place in your notes to look, and then when you go back and study, they help you there. I know I'm a very visual learner, and so if I doodle in the side margins, even if it's something as simple as drawing a needle for infectious diseases to remind me of medicine, something very simple like that will remind me what infectious diseases, where infectious diseases was found in my notes, and that was a reason for us living longer. I'm sorry, but that was a, sorry, that infectious diseases, I was thinking reduction of infectious diseases, but that infectious diseases are something that could be more likely as populations grow. So again, it's knowing where to find it in your notes for this section. So you've got a few pages of notes, and again, I would suggest that if there is a picture that was talked about that you do not see in your packet, but you know that it was in the slideshow, I would suggest that you draw those out in the margin. They will help you. They will help you immensely. Anytime we've included the picture, you can be assured that it is incredibly important. But you know, one thing that I think of here is a lot of people in my classes did not have a drawing out to the side to show rapid, slow, zero, and declining growth. And so when we gave that question as a bell ringer, they weren't sure what to put, and they were looking down here. Well, this is tracking the baby boomers. This is completely different. So when you see an image, if it looks easy enough to copy, copy it down to the side. Show me what all these look like. Then you've made a connection to your page, and these notes come alive, and they're not just simply there as filler in your notebook. Again, you've got even more stuff here. More notes, more notes. Okay, case studies. Case studies will be on your test. They will be on your notebook check. we pick case studies, and there were a lot of them in this unit. Remember, we only covered one chapter, but it took us about 3 weeks to do it. And the reason why is we went in depth on the things it talked about in the book. So when you're thinking that these case studies were just busy work, think again. Look at each case study, especially when you're studying for the test, and ask yourself, why was this important? What did it reaffirm from my learning in the book? For example, if we're looking here, this should have shown you that exponential growth, how the doubling time was changing rapidly. And this doesn't even have doubling time, but it's just the addition of 1 billion people. You should be seeing that this number here went down quite substantially. You should have definitely answers wherever there's a blank. But here's my suggestion as well. If you worked together with somebody, make sure that they work up to your caliber. It's sometimes permitted for you to work with a partner and write down the answers that they've provided to you. Hopefully you're discussing them and not simply copying from a sheet of paper, because that doesn't let you learn anything. But here's my warning against that. If the person is not doing A caliber work, you are not going to get an A caliber answer out of them. So if, for example, they just saw what is population problem in poor countries, rich countries, and they thought one answer is sufficient, that's just fine. We might not ask about that particular problem. We might ask a totally different problem. And when you go to do your notebook check, you don't have that one written down because you thought or your friend thought that one answer was good enough. These answers should be clear, concise, and thorough. Okay, that applies to all of these pages, but this was a good time to talk about it. So as we go on, again, that first case study was meant to highlight some of the issues that we will really see throughout the rest of the course now that we're switching away from ecology and more into sociology and demographics. But then the next case study moves on to China. China is a huge, huge population issue. And it also has one of the most recognized family planning programs out there. And so it becomes incredibly important that we understand why it happened, when it happened, and how changes have occurred. And that's the reason for the timeline. I know a lot of this stuff seemed like it was busy work, but it's not. It's to get you knowing more than the book's 1 to 2 little paragraphs about China. So we need to understand why it happened. China didn't just decide to do it because they wanted to be mean. Why did they decide to do it? So that's what you were doing here in your chart. Going on to the back, just thinking generally about how a notebook check is made. If you see a page with a lot of blanks, it means specifics are important. If you see pages with more open space, it means general ideas are more important. Again, we're not trying to make anything busy work. We have to make these assignments. The last thing we want to do is add extra questions where we don't need them, is to add extra ourselves when we could just give you questions out of a book. So all of these things that we have made, there's a reason why they were so important. So again, this is giving you a lot more information about China's one-child policy than the book has. Just in case you see it as an FRQ, just in case you see questions about it or asked anything about family planning, you can refer to China. Moving on to the AIDS map, and I'm sure this one felt like a lot of busy work to you as well. But what you should have been seeing is talked about down here at the bottom. You should have been looking for trends. Okay, you should have seen something change in the country from the north to the south. There should be some general ideas that we can gather from that. That's what you should be thinking about. Why does Egypt act so much more like the Middle East? Well, you can also see that their HIV rate is much lower than the rest of Africa. So you make some assumptions there about culture and religion and about their values. So again, there is a reason to be looking at this, in addition to that later on we'll talk about things like population structures of Botswana or of Uganda. So again, important for a few different links that we can make. Make sure that you also note that anything that wasn't on your list is going to be an under 1%. Case study 4, we were looking at some pretty big extremes against population growth entirely with the Vehement program, and then for population growth with the Catholics. So again, make sure that you understand when you see these big blanks, it means you should understand general ideas. Okay, here it says write down positive things leading to population of 7 billion. This one I know was kind of tough because he really talks about 2 of them as being more of reasons why it's not a problem, and the other 2 he really is talking a little bit more about some government initiatives and laws. But again, you need to understand generally why there are people out there who say not an issue, and then why are there people who say it is an issue. But pay attention also as you study and as you work on your packets that there are links to be made. They talk about here contraceptives in Africa, and guess what? That's case study number 5. Case study number 5, he starts to talk about how when you get an imbalance of men and women, you end up having some turmoil, and they talk about that in case study 6. So everything has a link, and if you're not seeing the link, then you're not paying enough attention to why we're doing the assignments we're doing. We can't spell everything out for you. This is a critical thinking class, and so when you are looking at these questions, think about, why does my teacher want to direct my attention there? This man is obviously crazy. Why did we read it? Because he is crazy, but he makes some points that have a legitimate backing. Not that his points are legitimate, I don't agree with what he says, but there are some points he makes that are made by others. He's using some factual data in his biases. Okay, so again, you got to think about that. Again, case study 5, this is looking at Christoph and his ideas for contraceptives. 2 separate articles. I'm sure he's written many, many more with his half the sky ideas. But again, we're going to look here at who he says is to blame, what the benefits are for contraceptives, looking at the developing world, and why our attitudes about them have changed. So again, you've got a lot of things going on here. You see that there's many, many more questions per page. So we're talking about some really specific ideas that he has, some really specific things that you can see linked to in the book, or that these are updates of. Okay, there's a lot of things in our book. We wish we could get a new textbook every year because things change in environmental science so quickly. And that's one of the reasons case studies help us out so much. Okay, moving on. World Without Women. You see a big blank here at the bottom. It was a very emotional piece. But one of the things that you see at the top is we see China reflected again. Think back to case study 2. We're talking now about consequences to the one-child policy. And so again, we're making links, we're weaving a thread throughout the curriculum that you can go back and rely on and study the connections. Remember also that Christoph talks about a world without women in case study 5, talking about how we get things like extreme Islamist terrorism because of countries where you have too much testosterone. It might sound crazy, but you see it again in case study 6. Okay? Looking at the power of the pyramids, this was designed to help you out with that portion of the book that discusses why these are important. This, hopefully you worked with a friend on to fill it out because it is a little bit of busy work, but it's all designed to get your population pyramids drawn. I'm not going to show you my page because there's nothing drawn on it. My key is elsewhere. But you see on this page, you not only had 4 up top, but you also had 3 on the bottom. So all in total, let's see, that's 7 plus the 2 you drew. So all in total, you should have 9 pyramids. All of these questions are talking about making predictions and being able to form businesses based on the population data. And I'm about to run out of time, and so let me finish up this one and then I'll start a new little ditty. So what you should be getting out of population pyramids is once you've drawn it, how can you make predictions? What are you going to say about that population in 10 years, 20 years? What differences can you see? What differences are not visible on the pyramid? All of those things are going to be hugely, hugely important for population pyramids. Same can be said about the demographic transition model in all reality. When you put those graphs together, you're going to be able to see the things it talks about back here. And I'm going to just try to squeeze this in. This is huge, important, goes back to 8.4. It's a difficult concept. And then you've got your current events.